Hi, this is Micah Rossi back with you again for Linking Up, Integrating Ministerial Support into School-Based Crisis Response. This is session 3 and will focus primarily on the component of normalization as part of the response phase of crisis intervention. As mentioned previously during this training, we know that normalization is a two-pronged process, or there are two goals to normalization. The first one is to help the student to come to grasp or come to terms and hopefully further understand their own emotions that they are feeling and the emotions that others are displaying in an outward sense. And the second piece is to help them move towards a more normalized daily existence. That's why it's oftentimes, advisable for students to come back to school even after a tragedy, after a few days of grieving, in order to get into a routine, a more normal routine. That is attractive for the human mind and the human spirit because there's predictability that lies in that. The key is to continue to offer support for these students who are in crises as they're engaging in their normal daily activities. So once you have the student stabilized, maybe they require a lot of stabilization, maybe they don't, you begin to listen to the telling and retelling of stories. And the reason that's up here is because you will hear a repetitive story. They'll want to tell it multiple times, and each time they tell it, you'll need to listen to it as intently as you did the first time. Okay? And you also want to, during this time, reflect back, saying things such as, "This is what I'm hearing you say," or "What I'm hearing you say is this." And so when you reflect back, they know that you're hearing them. They know that you are listening and that their story is coming across, even if it needs to be told on multiple occasions. As mentioned previously, you want to stay in the present moment. This really does help when it comes to reflecting back what a student may be saying. Okay, whether you're talking about the story itself, facts, or you're talking about emotions that they're feeling, you want to stay grounded in the present moment. Especially high schoolers, I think, are very, very perceptive with regards to whether or not you are fully with them or if your mind is preoccupied in another place. You want to make sure that you're inviting their thoughts or emotions. Make sure that they understand that this is the time and this is the place to allow the emotions to come out. However, you want to be gentle with regards to this, and especially when probing details. So if they're giving you a story and it's a broad story without much detail, be cautious when asking about, specifics. They will come forward with those in time. If you decide to probe for those details, just do it in a manner that isn't too abrasive or isn't too forward. Bide your time. Patience is a virtue in this situation. You'll also want to provide extensive information regarding common reactions to situations, to crisis situations. So you're going to cover emotional and physical reactions, which oftentimes goes hand in hand. The old question of what do we do? Do we feel first physically and then the emotions come, or do the emotions happen first and then the physical come? That's neither here nor there. But I will tell you that when you start to plan for treatment, oftentimes we feel more in control of our bodily functions. So we want to advise that perhaps with breathing exercises and things like that, we can thus be better prepared to control our emotions. We want to talk about what is a more typical, average, or normal reaction across the spectrum for students at that age. And at this time, it's really important that we don't accidentally minimize what they're feeling. So when you start to say, well, this is, I'll tell you what you're feeling right now, the guilt is absolutely, that's normal. I'm not surprised. That can come off as, well, you're telling me it's not important, like, everybody else is feeling this, so maybe it's not that important. And the answer to that is no, not at all. It's extremely important. So you may even say a statement like, I'm not trying to minimize anything you're feeling, because what you're feeling is, something that I haven't felt, and I'm not, I'll tell you right, I'm not feeling right now because I'm here with you to help you. But, guilt is something that does rise to the surface when a loved one passes for whatever reason. And then continue a conversation about, where the guilt ruminates from, etc. And finally, really respect personal and cultural boundaries. So, we talk about the broad culture. We have different ethnicities represented at Tybee High School, primarily white Caucasian and Hispanic. We have African American students as well, and each one of those cultures, depending on the household they grew up in, which is another variable, will interpret situations differently, and there are going to be boundaries that they're going to have difficulty crossing, and it may look like stifling emotion. It may look like remaining stoic. They're in the room with you for a reason, so hopefully eventually they'll come out of their shell as you establish rapport. But the best way to do this is put yourself in the situation of the student. You want to become their student. I've worked with students who hail from different religious and cultural backgrounds, and if I'm not aware of all the nuances of their particular culture or religion or spirituality, I'll ask them to teach me. I'll say, hey, you know what? I've never learned about that before. And oftentimes what that does is not only does it place them in a spot of control, which is very helpful in these situations, but also they feel valued and they feel like they have purpose, and it helps them reflect back on who they are. So this can be done in a number of ways. The biggest piece is we need to know that we're not the experts at all times with regards to culture, and so we need to ask the student to help us understand. Okay, so this next slide is comprised of a little vignette that I wrote up, and it is loosely based around a real situation that I've dealt with regards to crisis. And it deals with emotional and behavioral reactions, and I just kind of wanted to give a scenario. So the students must hear that it's okay and it is common to feel the emotional effects of grief, trauma, and loss. It may look something like this. So tell me about the emotions swirling around in your head right now, Johnny. Johnny may say sadness mostly, some anger. Reflect back. Sadness and anger. I can see why. Do you have any other feelings on top of that? And Johnny would say, I don't know. I kind of feel like I could have prevented it. Guilt then. Nods. Johnny nods. Yep. He's ashamed of it. Then explains what he could have done to prevent it. So, hey, if I hadn't suggested that we go to this party, if I hadn't suggested that we get in the car, if I hadn't allowed him to, have that fight with that person, there's any number of reasons, reasonable or not, that would, lend themselves to guilt. And it may not be rooted in logical thinking, It may be something that they're reaching and grasping for. The responder would come back with, well, guilt is a very heavy thing to carry, Johnny. It's unfortunately so common for people to bear that burden when unfortunate things happen to the ones they love. What we're doing in this situation is we're validating the feelings and emotions that Johnny is feeling, and that helps them feel like they're being listened to, and that's where the healing process can begin. And so with regards to that, telling them things like it's an unfortunate thing, but many people do carry it, is also realistic. You're validating, and you're also not fluffing. You're not beating around the bush. You're saying, that's hard, and I get it. Eventually you'll move to, what are some things we can do to help reason through this? And what are some things we can do to help you function better daily?